All right, I'm back for a third and final discussion of story games and RPGs and my experiences therein. Why am I going back to an old school model of play? I think a lot of people make a category mistake when they look at the old school. They say, well, it's about players being frail. It's about high lethality, or it's about player skill versus character skill. And some of these things are true, but more than anything, old school. And when I say old school, I don't just mean like OSR, TSR era D&D. I also mean Call of Cthulhu, Cyberpunk, conventional RPG design prior to the Forge, basically. Backwoods just don't smoke nearly as good as real cigars. But when you play these games, your character and your player have the same amount of information. Any information that your player has, especially if you're operating in a setting that the players aren't super familiar with, and you're shaking things up as a GM, and you're doing all the things that a good GM does. And even more so if you're operating with what I've seen some of the BroSR guys do with Patron Play and Fog of War. The players have about as much information as the characters do. And so tomorrow, I'm starting a new campaign. We're gonna be playing OD&D. We're doing a frontier, exploring the new world sort of game. And what I'm most concerned with is having the players engage as though they were their characters. Instead of thinking, what would be the most dramatically satisfying thing for my character to do, or what would be the most exciting thing to happen. A terrible culprit of this, there's a school of thought in horror and mystery design that's happening out of Powered by the Apocalypse, where certain roles and you determine what's the scariest thing that could happen right now, and you pass that off to the players. Absolutely not. We are going to be operating in the realm of in-character behavior. What do the characters know, and how do they act on that information? And we're going to pull way back like this to explore genuine agency. And we're doing OD&D instead of AD&D to keep it mechanically simple, because mechanics don't matter necessarily that much to me. I think different mechanics will produce different results. And the main thing I'm concerned with is what will produce in-character decision-making from the players. And so, who knows? We might increase complexity through supplements over time until we've arrived at AD&D. But for the time being, the main thing is you no longer have writer's room powers. You no longer have meta currencies that give you power over the game world, not as a character, but as a writer. We have removed from the players the privileges afforded them by Powered by the Apocalypse and the Forge type game mechanics. The trees are just really shaking. They're swaying like 8 to 15 feet wide arcs, big swoops. It's windy out. I'm hoping that this isn't translating into the microphone. But circling back to the point at hand, my hope is that by restoring diegetic knowledge as the primary mode of knowledge for the players, and removing meta knowledge or meta narrative and meta game power from them, we will see an emergence of legitimate agency. Something that happened when we played Star Wars, when we played Blades in the Dark, and we had that 15 session game, is that the players began to stop thinking about how do I solve this problem with what my character has at hand? And they began thinking in terms of, how do I solve this problem with the narrative powers that I have as a player? And in particular, these games, because they're trying to emulate genre fiction, and in particular television, episodic structure, there's always a return to equilibrium. Towards the end of the game, my players wanted to establish a permanent base of operations and start really having clout and weight in the world, and the game mechanics fought them on this, because the game wants them to stay in a perpetual state of episodic structure, where at the end of each session, things are restored basically to equilibrium. We will see if this experiment pays off. I'm posting these videos somewhat for posterity. And we will see in 6-8 months' time if this has paid off at all. And you can follow me on Twitter to see things about this. And be updated on this process. But yeah, I just think that it's not... Oh, it's gone out. What a shame. It's no longer satisfying to me to try and create a story in advance, or to plan for a good story. Increasingly, I believe, when I look back at my 15 years of D&D and RPGs, the best stories are the ones that emerge after the fact. It's like golf or any other sport. The best stories are the ones that you tell after the game is over about what happened as a result of the game. Good stories are not planned. They are not constructed intentionally. Nobody plays basketball with the intention of, well, if I do this, then it will make a great story to tell afterwards. You play basketball according to the rules of basketball to win the objectives of basketball, and the stories, the narrative, emerges as a second-order consequence as a matter of course. And it's my hope that a restoring of old-school principles to my game will encourage this sort of behavior from my players. If you've gotten this far in my little series, I appreciate you sticking with me, and I'm sure there will be more inane ramblings from Night Danger in the Woods, hopefully under less windy conditions. Nonetheless, thank you for sticking around. This is the part where YouTubers would say like and subscribe, but frankly, these videos are more for me to listen back after the fact and sort and orient my thoughts, and for me to share with my players to articulate the things that I'm thinking about. So I guess, do whatever you want. I'm not your dad. Have a good day.